tonight's Common Council Committee of the Whole for February 27th, 2024. Roll call, please.
Tauschak.
Here.
Herman. Matsdorf.
Here.
Gilson.
Here.
Hildebrand. Pankwitz.
Here.
Shilsky. Nelson.
Here.
Let the record show we have a quorum. Next is the approval of the minutes from December 12th, 2023. Chair will entertain a motion.
Second the motion.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 3, discussion and recommendation of changes to municipal code section 2-1-9, residence of employees. Tim, you want to give us a summary, please?
Yeah, I'll give a brief background, and our HR specialist, Leah Federwish, is here tonight as well. So current resident requirement of employees or emergency personnel is defined as no greater than 15 miles from the nearest corporate boundary of the city. So not listed in your memo, but in the code, 2-1-9B. Just for your reference, emergency personnel includes Director of Public Safety, Police Chief, Fire Chief, Electrical Operations Manager, Wastewater Superintendent, Water Foreman, and all other Plymouth Utilities non-administrative staff, snowplow drivers, and any employee determined by the City Administrator, Utility Manager, to be necessary for public safety. So we do have a recent vacancy in our Utilities Department, so we thought now would be a good time to address this concern. Given the recruitment market for new staff, staff is recommending that a waiver requirement be added to the code for those that potentially could be beyond 15 miles. The example Leah and I, we're thinking as if we get an employee or an applicant from, say, Random Lake, but parts of Random Lake from the city boundary are 15.1, 15.9 miles, but they will likely be able to be here in 15 to 20 minutes, just straight up 57. Whereas someone could live 13 miles from the crow flies out in the country, it's still going to take 30 minutes to get into the city. So staff would develop an internal policy, and we talked with Attorney Fieber to make sure that that is consistent as we apply this moving forward. But we wanted to get some feedback from the Committee of the Whole to make sure this potential change makes sense. Leah, any other feedback, or is that kind of what we were going with? Thank you.
So the chair will open it up to any comments or questions regarding the policy change.
I would have a couple questions or comments, I guess.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I don't have a problem with, a waiver, and I know in the past, police department, they don't have any residency. I guess nowadays when we're trying to hire quality people, I guess I would, maybe, I've been out of it for a couple of years. I guess I would prefer increasing the mileage, the radius from city versus a waiver. I think with a waiver, it depends, unless you're gonna have a set, is it gonna be 40 miles, 42 miles? And once you give somebody 40 miles, well, I'm 42 miles now, so what's
Sure.
two more, you know what I mean, so.
And I guess the reason why we chose a waiver over expanding the distance, because we thought of that as well. For example, is our snowplow drivers, we do want those folks to live within 15 miles to make sure that they are there. But, right, if we get an applicant that's 15.1, we're gonna grant it, but.
Or 17. that's a
17,
good
right, are we
application,
going to? So I think we acknowledge that we need to be consistent in how we apply that and what becomes too much.
And I think that's could be the difficult
Yes.
part about the waiver.
Agreed. But I guess what we were trying not to create is different standards for different departments. If a department, say Public Works, wanted it to be 15 and the utility staff wanted it to be 25.
Right. I think either no residency, keep it what the police department's doing, versus have three different set of standards for three different groups.
Yep.
And I think, I would hope that employees nowadays, if they're living 40 miles away and the weather's bad and you're a snowplow driver, maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way. I would think they would leave a little early and get here and anticipate that we're gonna get called in. Some responsibility goes with the employee, not always with the employer. But maybe that is changing too, to a point.
I will say our snowplow drivers have done an excellent job getting here,
I
so,
would agree, over the years, yeah.
yep.
Other comments? John?
I guess a fear would be, would there be a sense of favoritism on staff, you know? Well, you let him do it, but you fired somebody else.
Sure.
Because they were. I'd almost rather just not have a requirement, period, I don't know.
And potentially, maybe the discussion is based on department. I know our public works staff, DPW, does want to see a requirement of 15 miles typically. Our electrical operations staff really needs a 30-minute response time, so there's a little variation there. I think that's the reason we were kind of going with the waiver route. It provides a little flexibility, but I do see the concern.
Well, I guess you could start with a waiver, and if it's not working out the way you hope it to work out, you can always, we can come back and
Sure.
revisit, a non-residency requirement at all.
Okay.
Are there, well, Kathy's not, but you would, are there any DPWs or utilities that have a non-residency requirement, municipally owned?
You know, we'll have to do some research on that one, other municipalities to
I'm
see
not
where they
sure,
are.
like New Holstein and some of these.
Yeah, a lot are a 30-mile, 30-minute response time.
Okay.
Ours is a little shorter.
But overall, I would support the change at this point.
And I think what we could do, I like the idea of trying it out, see how it works. If we're starting to have a lot of issues where one person wants a waiver and like you were saying, it's 16 and the next person wants it and it's 20 and then it keeps building up, then clearly we've got an issue we've got to address. But I think we would try to set some standard policies that would allow us to be consistent.
It's hard to be consistent, but at the same time, you look at the quality of the applicant and you don't want to rule somebody out because they're a half mile,
Or even, what's 5 miles now?
yeah,
Yep.
you know.
I think that's the challenge, is we want to make sure we're opening up the recruitment pool for staff, future staff.
And at the same time, I'm sure, we'd like to have as many as possible be residents because they're recipients of city payroll and city benefits and so on. So it's a tough balance that, times are changing over 10, 20 years too. I guess I would say try the waiver and put a watchful eye on it and just see,
I would agree with that, yeah.
what the development is. Diane?
So then what happens if you do the waiver and then all of a sudden you have somebody that's far out and then you rescind it, or?
Yeah, so I think once a waiver would be granted for a staff member, I don't think staff could rescind that. Say someone purchases a home, I think that would be unfair to that person. I think it would be a permanent waiver if they move. And they would have to come back and ask for another waiver, say if they were gonna move to another location.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Like their grandfather did.
You grandfather.
Yep.
Yep,
You don't want to change the rules once the game is started.
correct.
Right, you don't want to move the goalpost every time.
Right.
Yeah.
Do we need a formal action
I-
on this?
I think,
Council level?
well, being committee of the whole, we can make recommendations.
I think you can make a recommendation.
But not vote. So I think the recommendation would be to, what I'm hearing, to proceed with the waiver
Okay.
and monitor that.
Yeah, we'll monitor that. If we need to come back for a change or remove the requirement, that's something we can do in the future.
Yeah,
Sounds good to me.
okay,
Yeah, that sounds good.
okay.
Thank you much.
So be it.
Will do.
Good.
We'll bring that forward. Thanks, Leah.
Moving on
Appreciate it.
to item 3, discussion on creation of R6 zoning district in chapter 13. Tim?
All right, so through the development of the comprehensive plan and the city's strategic plan, it has been determined over the next 20 years that over 1,000 new housing units will likely be needed in the city of Plymouth. In addition, our ad hoc affordable housing committee has been meeting over the last 10 months to really try to help guide housing development in Plymouth over the next 10 years. So currently our Multifamily zoning district is an R4 zoning district. It has a residential building with a maximum of 12 units with 50% building coverage. And that maximum of 12 units is a potential constraint for development here in the future for Plymouth. Attachment 1 does compare peer communities and some of their higher density zoning districts. So the Ad hoc Housing Committee, one of their first action recommendations is recommending to Plan Commission and the Common Council the adoption of an R6 zoning district. So the R6 zoning district, there is an attachment that outlines that. What I want this group, the committee, to focus on are sort of the details in the bullet point of the memo. Don't get kind of bogged down in the attachment of setbacks and frontage requirements. We'll go through those as staff and present those to Plan Commission in more detail. But in a, essentially, what we're proposing is a maximum of 28 units per building permitted and a maximum of 56 units permitted with a conditional use permit. Minimum lot area per dwelling unit of 2,400 square feet, and a minimum lot area per dwelling unit for assisted living at 2,000 square feet. Keeping the 50% building coverage, 3-story building would be permitted, 4 stories permitted with a conditional use, and then a traffic impact analysis would be required for developments over 100 units or developments proposing buildings that would be required for a conditional use approval. Just for clarification, the creation of a new zoning designation does not rezone any property. This just gives the Common Council the ability to do so should a request come in for something like this in the future. So that is sort of the brief rundown. I'm happy to answer any questions from the committee and go from there.
I guess I'll start it off. Tim, one question I would have would be, in our immediate vicinity, how do we, with an R6, compare to other communities?
Yeah, I would say this would put us in the range of other communities with an R6 district. I would say we're still on the lower end of some of those communities. Attachment 1 outlines, for example, Sheboygan, mixed residential, which is 8 dwelling units per acre, and urban residential, which is 12 dwelling units per acre. At our last ad hoc meeting, I believe we sort of had a hypothetical on a 30-acre property, how many units could be. It came out to about 9 units per acre. So this would put us, right in that vicinity with Sheboygan, sort of mixed residential, but lower than some more, I would say, populous communities closer to Milwaukee, Port Washington, West Bend, Grafton. Their densities are a little bit higher. So I would say it makes us competitive. It's a jump, but it's not a large jump in the potential zoning unit per acre.
Any other comments or questions, John?
Well, I think one of the things about this is that we need to have some flexibility to actually draw investors to the area to want to develop something. If it's easier for them to get what they want somewhere else, that's where they're going to put their money. Because there's shortages of housing all over, so we have to be competitive to draw in investors that will build these buildings.
Correct, and that's what we're hearing from developers. We'll get phone calls asking, what's your, limitations for zoning, and we'll say 12 units per building, and they say, that's gonna be too small for our development moving forward. So, I can't give you a number of calls, but, it's been 5 or 6 over the last year of just potential developers interested in speculating.
Are we prepared to move ahead with R6 through the process we have to go to Plan Commission on that?
Correct. So after committee of the whole, this would refer to Plan Commission. Plan Commission would get their chance to vet this. It would then have a public hearing back at the Common Council. And Hannah, there's a certain deadline, has to be a
Yeah.
couple times in the newspaper.
Yeah, twice in the newspaper.
So likely if this goes to Plan Commission in March, it could be back at Common Council, end of March, early April.
Any other comments on that? It certainly opens up opportunity for the city. It does seem that driving around 12 is a small number. And you're right, I think we have to be in the game, so to speak, yeah.
Yep, it gives us the option.
Okay. With that, recommendation is to proceed with the R6 concept, and we can get into the detail, like you said, after it goes through Plan Commission and a public hearing.
Correct.
So that doesn't sound so bad. Okay. Well, those are certainly opportunities looking ahead. Any other comment on that? Okay. Item 5, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Makes a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We stand adjourned.